Hello and welcome to Youth Assembly. Happy International Women's Day. I'm so excited today. Like, it's for women, it's for every woman that is doing so well in their field of work, raising children, being the best wives, being the best humans, being the best friends that they are, and trying to make their voice heard in every area of their life. We celebrate it today, and Click Naija is here for you. Today, we look at women, highlighting what women have done so far since the COVID-19 pandemic. We look at the achievements and how we can even achieve more as Nigerian women. My name is Sylvia Ishebe. All right, I'm not alone today. I have with me Dorothy Njamanze. Dorothy Njamanze is a gender and human rights advocate.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. All right. So, women have been set to, it's the year 2021, we know, right? And March 8th is always celebrated as International Women's Day. And today, the theme of the celebration is uh, how, okay, choose to challenge. We choose to challenge. That's a campaign theme, and a lot of people are already talking about it. What are women challenging? What do they want out of all of what is happening in the country and the world in general? So, on Youth Assembly today, we are going to highlight what the achievements of Nigerian women during the COVID-19 pandemic has been, and what are some of those things that they need to do, or how the society in general, the government of the day, can do to help them reach their potential, attain their best position, and also project them more in the global field. All right, so you agree with me, Dorothy, that it's been a tough year for women around the world, especially since the pandemic began. So, despite all of this, women are still winning. As we celebrate International Women's Day, how would you describe Nigerian women since the pandemic, especially in your area of work?
Well, Nigerian women have been resilient. Nigerian women have just been surviving, the situation. Um, the disparity occasioned by patriarchy made it more difficult for women to, experience the pandemic, which hit every human being really bad, ordinarily. And so we had women suffering multiple tragedies because they were expected to endure those tragedies like domestic violence simply because they were women. They were expected to deplete their accounts in some cases and fund their men partners or other people because they were women, and they were expected to do what is expected of them irrespective of how they feel about it. And that's, the premise upon which we consistently advocate for the respect of the rights and the feelings of women. Disrespecting the feelings and the rights of women tends towards violations, and there are legal provisions for addressing violations. Yeah, so that's pretty much what it is, But women, a lot of women were trapped in with their abusers during the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of women who needed to access hospitals could not access the hospitals, especially those dependent on public transportation, because there was no public transportation. Women who got pregnant found it difficult to access needed medical care that they needed, especially those who were dependent on public transportation because there was no public transportation, and also because many hospitals were focusing on COVID-19 as against any other issues. Women who lived in rural areas who are not technology savvy could not latch onto the different things those of us who are technology savvy latched onto. There was the advent of holding meetings online and working from their mobile devices. We had situations where people, even those in urban areas, had to struggle with coming up to par with these new norms of using technology to do what they needed to do. And so I could only imagine what those in the rural areas or those who didn't have access to the technology, I could only imagine what they did.
Mm.
Food, it was very scarce, and it got so bad that there had to be palliatives that were given out. Now, the palliatives, as far as I was concerned, could have been given out earlier, but even when the palliatives came, the palliatives saw to the needs of what men wanted. or men needed. It didn't take into cognizance the things that women needed. Women did not
Which
stop
are
menstruating. Women did
okay.
not stop menstruating. And so there should have been sanitary pads in those
Mm.
palliatives. And because a lot of people were put together, over a long period of time, condoms should have made it to the palliatives. A lot of domestic violence cases that were reported were not because the women did not want to engage in sexual activity with their partners, but they didn't want to engage in unsafe sexual activity because going through pregnancies needs planning. So a lot of the time, people just make pregnancies happen upon women and expect them to bear it in good conscience, forgetting that women have their projections and their life, their lives and their plans. And so these are the
All
different
right.
things.
Okay, but the campaign theme for this year is choose to challenge, and you've highlighted some of the things or the challenges that women are facing in Nigeria here. So, what is the role of women and the governments in general or people around in helping women stand up for their rights and choosing to challenge the norm?
Okay, very quick. Important things. We're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic situation, for instance. A presidential task force team was established, but we have the national gender policy, which makes it, mandatory that at least there should be 35% affirmative action, right? The constitution of that presidential task force didn't take into cognizance the realities of women. The Ministry of Women Affairs was conspicuously missing there. And so it brings us back to what we choose to challenge. We choose to challenge the non implementation of existent laws and policies that could increase the visibility of women in important tables or important tables or at important tables, whatever your preferred preposition is. Um, if for instance, the Ministry of Women Affairs was there because we're in direct contact with that ministry, then the realities of women, including the need to include sanitary pads in the palliatives, would have come up stronger. The humanitarian affairs just looks at humanity generally, mostly from the lens of the male, the gender lens of a male. It doesn't look at it from a fully gendered perspective to take into cognizance the realities of all genders. And that was a very huge problem, and it accounted for a lot of things. So we had a lot of people go back to using things like newspapers for when they were menstruating, amongst other
Hmm.
things. What do we choose to challenge? Up
Yes.
until now, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, is not domesticated in all the 36 states of Nigeria. It's not, and in some cases where it is domesticated, for instance, like in Edo State, it is not justiciable. I wonder how such a very delicate law went through the process and such an error was made. And then in other cases where it is domesticated and justiciable, they haven't worked it into their budgets well enough. Ekiti State is doing perfectly well, wonderfully well, and there's still room for improvements. Don't get me wrong. Lagos
Hmm.
State is doing well by the day. Yes, Lagos State is doing well. There are a few other states that are striving to do well here and there, but it could be done better. The Child Rights Act is still not domesticated in everywhere. For women to become, they were all women were once girls, right? And so the
Yes.
importance of the well-being of girls, it cannot be overemphasized. One strong thing we keep on fighting is the what people call child marriage, which in all essence and reality is child rape. Until we have taken a stand with the law, until the government has taken a stand with the law and encourages more citizens in the country to take a stand with the law beside the government, against violence, against perpetrators, against predators, against harmful practices, then we keep on being endangered. The reality of how the implementation of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act would be beautiful to Nigeria is that it is going to increase women's participation, women's political participation and political visibility. We tend to see more women get a chance to make it at appointive positions than elective positions. We cannot control the elective positions, but the appointive positions that can be controlled, 35% of the appointments are not done to ensure that they are at least females. And while we're talking about 35%, there are people like me who tell us that gender parity is it. Without gender parity, you've not gotten to where you are. I'm looking forward to the time where we'll be doing 50%. Now, when you have 35% of women in political participation, you increase the capacity of the women to make political impacts and for their possible impacts to be appreciated, and it gives them a better standing or a better opportunity to go for elective positions. So you see, these are the things we choose to challenge this period. We challenge, the lack of gender responsive budgeting. Because if we don't put our money where the mouth is, then it means that we are still not servicing the problems. We're not taking care of the problems. Sexual and gender-based violence is still a problem. It's still a big thing. People still die from sexual and gender-based violence, but predominantly, the victims of sexual and gender-based violence are females. And so it's important for us to treat sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria as an emergency. Implementation of the 1% Consolidated Revenue Fund to fund emergencies needs to have been happening as soon as immediately. And then the government and civil society collaborations needs to be strengthened. The people seem to trust the civil society more, and the civil society should be at par with the government. If the government funds to some extent what the actual activities that the civil society does, support civil society to do the basic things government is supposed to be doing, which civil society is doing, more people will be better impacted. Remember that irrespective of the actions of the government, whatever the civil society does translates into the success or the failures of the
Okay,
government.
speaking about the
So, and
government.
when I say
Yeah, speaking about the
government,
government of the day and how they are choosing to celebrate. So, say that the Buhari women, if you've heard of that name, these are some of the women in the president's cabinet, and he is choosing to celebrate them today. They make up to like 32 women. How would you describe this move? Is it a welcome development, or what else needs to be done apart from celebrating people in his cabinet? What else can the government do to celebrate women in Nigeria and increase their visibility?
well, I'm a realist, and for me, anything, the celebration in question, what does it translate to? Does it I would rather that whatever that is being done be significant enough to leave a mark in the sands of time, so that the women in the villages are directly affected. These are a select 32 women, according to you. But my question would be, what quality of positions do these women hold in the first instance? In comparison with the men around him, what is the proportion, the percentage of the women in question in comparison with the men around him. If they're not up to 50%, then that's a big problem. Even if they're not up to 50%, let's start by what the national gender policy has, which is 35%. The 35% affirmative action. If they're not up to 35%, then it's just a carnival to ensure that people don't question things. That's my honest opinion. What should be done?
Mhm.
Concrete things that would affect the lived realities of women and girls in Nigeria, and not making a few women feel special while other people just continue their livelihoods, not knowing what to happen next. Um, Lived realities. More women need funding to start businesses. More women need funding to do different things. The people who need the funds, the survival funds, do not have the information on how to assess these things. This is a good opportunity to boost the capacity of women to impact economic better. Let me tell you something. Are you aware that the rural women are best accounted for to be the ones to return loans when given to them? You know, it's a
Mm.
statistic that's written. So this is an opportunity to say, women, come and take resources and utilize these resources, because at the end of the day, what women can bring to the table is bound to impact economy better. Nigeria's economy is suffering because we haven't taken a look at the cost implication of permitting gender based violence to thrive in Nigeria. We need to address that very effectively for the Nigeria's economy to boom way better. We have women at the rural level doing amazing things. We have women, mid class, which almost doesn't exist, doing amazing things. We have women at the top level doing amazing things. Now we need to consolidate the amazing things these women are doing and improve capacity of more women to bring amazing things to the table. Women with disabilities, the realities are still far from what it should be. You know, um, the potentials of these people need to be addressed realistically and from a human rights perspective to ensure that the right things are being done, one, and when the right things are done, let's watch how Nigeria will boom. If the sustainable development goals are supposed to, be achieved realistically, especially in Nigeria, then the well-being of women matters. The capacity
Yeah.
building of women matters. The development of women matters. And it's not about the it's not about the show offs or the photo ops. No, it's about realistic impact. The woman in my local government, the woman in my ward, in my village, what is her capacity in connection with what my capacity is, what opportunities are exposed to her in relation with what opportunities are exposed to me. These are very, very founded things that need to be addressed, without which we're not making much of a progress.
All right. So, women, Nigerian women actually are taking a bold step in being recognized globally. Our very own Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, was recently appointed as the Director General of the WTO. We have Amina Mohammed, who is also the Deputy Secretary General. And speaking about Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, her sister, a doctor in Maryland, was recently decorated as Maryland's Family Physician of the Year because of her work in this pandemic, saving lives and all. So, how do you feel when you hear the stories or these achievements of women, especially Nigerian women, in the international scene?
Well, pace setting by Nigerian women in the international scene is not something that is alien. I happen to be one person that is familiar with that. The Dorothy Jamanzi and three others versus the Federal Republic of Nigeria case that resulted in the landmark judgment citing the Maputo Protocol. This is the Dorothy Jamanzi that you're talking with today. Nigerian women have been making strides bit by bit, little
Mm,
by little, and making impacts all over. But our impact is not properly documented or is replaced with a lot of fanfare, and it makes it to look like, oh, the important thing is that a woman made it to the place. No, the woman did not
okay.
just make it to the place. The woman impact put her there. It's because of our patriarchal ideologies that she got to such places. I remember the politics around how NOI, that's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, got to the place. I remember that when she got to the place, there was some publication that came out citing the woman in the
True.
IMF.
Yes.
I believe she's really way more advanced than NOI. But irrespective of whatever the situation is, we need to look at, projecting the concrete things, the concrete achievements of women. One of the things about celebrating our stories or telling our stories or documenting our stories in the sands of time, one of the things that could be done is a deliberate investment in using arts to document our stories properly and let
Mm,
women tell their stories. Let patriarchy stop telling our stories and editing our realities. I'm also a filmmaker and I know what it has been. I've had a reason to want to document a lot of achievements of different women at different points in time and realities of different women across board. But unfortunately, people say, oh, it's too emotional and it's going to make it's too emotional and um it's too emotional and it's going to disturb the sensibility of people are suffering. I don't think it's fair for you to turn people's sufferings into comedy, right? So we need to have more deliberate funding of women in the creative spaces to document the realities of women. Now we're looking at the big impacts that are being made. throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, while people could
Mhm.
not move, there were women in our villages that were busy mediating day and night to broker peace, to improve peace and prevent conflict situation. These are people known by the locals that need to be celebrated. But unfortunately, the entertainment space or the creative space has limited content that it's willing to invest in. So these are broad-based places that need to be deliberately challenged, to document our successes. You know about NOI Sister. Many people in the villages that need to know about NOI Sister have not heard about it because it's not been properly documented or told. The daughter to the late Dora Akunyili is also somebody
Yes.
doing amazingly well with her artworks. There's so many people all over the place that are making, amazing impact. But it's time to document our story well and tell our story well. And the best way to do it is to empower us to tell our stories by ourselves.
Hmm. And telling our stories by ourselves. You mentioned that some people said when you were about to tell a story of a woman, they said it is too emotional. Now, how can the narrative or the mindset be changed? Of people saying the stories of women are emotional, the stories of women should. Okay, can you hear me?
Unfortunately, I seem to be having a problem hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Well, I can hear you loud and clear. Hello. All right, while she sorts that out, you can be a part of the discussion. We don't want to just talk and forget about you, right? Okay, so send in your comments and tell us what areas you think women can be empowered or needs more representation. Yes, whatever area you want women to start telling their stories, please put your comment down. If you have questions for Dorothy, you can also put your questions and then she will answer, hopefully. Dorothy Njamanze is a gender and human rights advocate. And my name here is Sylvia Ishimi. Okay, so Dorothy, can you hear me now? I hope it's okay now.
I can hear you now very well, loud and clear.
Okay. All right. So, all of these challenges you've mentioned, especially the women being emotional, they shouldn't tell their stories. How can we overcome that as a society and project the stories of women so that the world sees what Nigerian women are capable of? Not until we get old or more advanced before people notice our work. How do we do that?
How that's fine. Continued persistency in choosing to challenge. We will don't stop it. We'll keep choosing to challenge, and that's
Yes.
for this year. I mean, every year there's something that people. Well, I'm trying to see if I can. Okay. Yeah, choosing to challenge.
Mhm.
Sha. So yeah, we keep choosing to challenge. We keep on being the reality check for everyone. Um, to what extent is the Ministry of Justice not doing what it should do? To what extent is the Nigerian police not doing what it needs to do? Every sphere of society has a contribution to make, a valid contribution to make, to ensure that everyone, including and especially women and girls, are safe, or is safe in society. So we'll continue being the reality check. We will not stop being that reality check, and we'll keep on pointing it out. When people go through domestic violence, for instance, are there things that can help the victims to set up themselves again? That's something that is very, very, very needed. There's need for beyond shelters, sexual assault referral centers, domestic violence referral centers. There's need for them to have accommodation. There's need for them to be able to relocate with their children, or reunite with their children, or move to safety with their children, or move to safety with their children. There's need for them to have accommodation. There's need for them to be able to relocate with their children, move to safety with their children, or move to safety with their children.
International. Okay, we can't hear you anymore. Dorothy, we can't hear you. I can't hear you from this end. Can you hear me? Well, I can't. I think something happened from your end. I can't hear you anymore. International. No, no, I can't. Okay, okay, now it's good. Yes, it's okay now. All right, before we go, one more question. The need for mentorship. We've seen highlighted some of the achievements of these women. Yes, from Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala to Amina Mohammed to the ones in the grassroots, the rural women, to you also, Dorothy, who is doing amazingly well in your field, trying to fight against gender-based violence. How do we bring young women on board and mentor them also to be able to stand up for their right and know what they really should be standing for in the society? Okay, we're getting feedback that we you can't be heard. So maybe you should check your connection, your whether you're muted or something. I don't know what's going on. Okay, we're getting feedback that I can hear myself. Oh, not you. I don't know what's going on. Okay, it's okay now. Hmm. So, what are your final words to every woman listening to
We need
you
to improve capacity
right
of
now
women and girls to better
and
utilize
listening to?
technology to improve their realities by themselves. Yeah, technology seems to have done it again. But irrespective, we're here. Yeah, we're here. And in the documentation of what we're doing, of what women and girls do, it's important to ensure that the languages that are deployed in doing this are diverse languages. Not every time everything will be done in English. Sign language is a very important language that is often omitted, and it needs to be better utilized. Um, our local indigenous languages need to be better used to convey these messages so that it builds the capacity of everybody generally. The 2023 elections are by the corner, and irrespective of the 2023 elections being by the corner, a lot of people, especially victims of sexual and gender-based violence, need to have their capacity built in participating in elections and electoral processes so that their impact is felt. They need to understand that their votes count, and the children who are underage need to understand that wherever anybody tries to use marriage or pregnancy, so to say, to make them believe that it's all they need to do to be able to vote or get goodies from elections or from politicians, that they have an opportunity to report such things. We need to improve capacity of people to report violations against them. And when they report the violations against them, we need to improve capacity of the state to respond to violations that are reported by women and girls. If the police is not responding well enough to violations reported by women and girls, then it's a big problem. So while we're improving the capacity of people to report things, we need to improve the capacity of the state to respond to things. By and large, you know, we need to make more deliberate effort to balance violates. Welcome back.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dorothy, for making out time today out of your busy schedule to do this with us, to celebrate with us, all women in Nigeria and the world as we mark International Women's Day. Dorothy Njamanze is a gender and human rights advocate, and we wish you the best of today, even as you go out to work. Okay. Hopefully next time we'll have you. Okay, so thank you also to you who joined today and who shared this video or commented. We appreciate you and we celebrate you for doing this with us today. We'll be back tomorrow for another interesting edition of Youth Assembly. The show was produced by Hafsat.
Thank you for having me
Bye.
on.
Bye-bye.